Welcome to the OmniSports Podcast. Featuring your host, Bobby Labita.
Hello and welcome back, everyone, to another week of the OmniSports Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Labita, back for Week 21 NBA action. If this season were weeks to months to years, you could drink. Happy 21st week in the NBA. So if this past week you went out to get cigarettes and you haven't come home to see your family and you haven't been paying attention to basketball, don't worry, I got you. So please come home, Dad. Don't you dare tell me that my dad's coming home, because he's dead. That's selfish of you to give me false hope. Anyways, enough of that dark opening. We have two sponsors this week. This is the first time we have two sponsors, and I think it's apropos this late in the season. First, our first sponsor is Being a Tired Little Bitch. Now, if you are audio only, you cannot see my face, but this is the face of a man who's a tired little bitch. And the reason that my face looks like that is because I am a tired little bitch. And I was looking in my camera and I looked and I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely 30 now. Yeah, you see it in the beard, you see it in the darkness below the eyes and the existential crises that induces. But that's okay, because when I'm done being a tired little bitch, I will bring us to our second sponsor of this week, gambling. That's right. You could maybe change your life if you gamble correctly. And a way you could gamble correctly is OmniSports is putting together a March Madness bracket that is officially live in the link below in the show notes or in the YouTube notes, wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching this. And I encourage you to join. There are two different links. One is for a free, you can get into 5 brackets in that, and it'll be a winner takes all, top 3 bragging rights. And we will also have a paid version, $5 per bracket. Also the same thing, max of 5. If you want to use the same 5 for both, you can. For the pay entry, until I gets the money, you're not in. Yeah, that's right. We're going hardball today. Whew, this feels like one of my weirdest intros I've ever done, but that's okay, because what leads to a weird intro will lead to a great show. So this week we have some awesome things we're talking about. We're talking about all the buzzer beaters getting us in the mood for March Madness. We're talking about SGA doing something a little bit cringy. Then we're going to talk about our boy, because we haven't talked about enough recently, Victor, who had another awesome week. We're going to talk about some performances this week, looking at Daniel Gafford's streak, looking at Sabonis over Anthony Davis, looking at Jalen Duren, and we're also going to be looking at some awkward moments of the week, some awkward moments between Anthony Black and Grady Dick, and we also have some awkward moments where Kobe's statue was unveiled, but we'll get to that. And the last thing we're going to talk about is the Wild Wild West, and this is my preview for that section, even though it's at the end. This year, I'd say, as far as I've been alive, is the funnest I think the West has ever been in the regular season. But we'll talk about why that is and all of everything mentioned before now.
Storylines of the week. 1.
Tie game at 101. 4 seconds. 3. Get it off. Bam for 3. Yes! Bam wins the game with a 3. A happy ending in the Motor City.
Caruso to inbound. DeRozan to tie it.
Oh! The marvelous DeRozan
Does it again in Indianapolis, and we're going to overtime
Compton's in the house.
with some DeMar deja vu. Kleba to inbound. Kleba looking in for Irving. Irving for the win. Oh my! A southpaw finish from Kyrie Irving. Just absurd.
What you just heard was audio of not 1, not 2, but 3 different buzzer beaters that happened this week. And what can we say? It's March. And in March Madness, we're used to seeing buzzer beaters for the NCAA, but now we're seeing it here in basketball hoops. So I'm going to quickly talk about each of these in order of least impressive to most impressive, but they're all really impressive, so that's probably a terrible way to categorize it. First, you have Bam Adebayo, noted three-point shooter. That's a joke if you didn't get it, because he's not a three-point shooter. But it didn't matter that he's not a three-point shooter, because he hit a deep three at the buzzer to beat the Pistons. Now, if I'm the Heat, I don't know if I'm excited that I'm only beating the Pistons, with a last-minute three-pointer by my center. But it was an awesome play, and the team, as in all of these plays, was incredibly excited. Which leads us to the second buzzer beater. I don't know if it's a buzzer beater in the traditional sense, since it didn't win the game. However, it took it to overtime. DeMar DeRozan did a classic DeMar DeRozan basket where with 2 seconds left, he gets the ball, his back is facing the basket, and he jumps and turns 180 to shoot with, no reference point to the actual basket itself, and he makes it to tie the game. His teammates were going crazy. The rabbit hunter, Caruso, was losing his mind. And the Bulls were able to outlast the Pacers in overtime. So DeRozan sent them to overtime, and it ended up working. And DeRozan actually had his season high with 46 in that game. Which leads us to the last buzzer beater, and I was very fortunate to watch this live because buzzer beaters are cool, to watch or listen to in a podcast that is being made by a devilishly handsome tired bitch like myself. But Kyrie Irving. Now, I typically don't want to give him his flowers, but this must be done. This is one of the coolest shots I've seen in a long time. Kyrie gets the ball with inbounds. Again, only 2 seconds left. An intense game between the Mavericks and the Nuggets. And kind of moving away from Jokic around the center of the key, around free throw. He throws the ball up, sort of like this weird kind of half hook shot with his left hand. And he's not left-handed. And he ends up making it, and everyone loses their mind. Luka Doncic is like, what the frick just happened, bro? I probably didn't say it that. He probably said it in another language, but it was crazy. And so this week was awesome because it led to a lot of exciting buzzer beaters, which will make up for the cringe moment we're about to listen to.
What is a 10-point game? Shea caught underneath. On top. And 10 home runs, 3, no good. And there will be a foul for them in their push toward the Eastern Conference playoff standings. We'll meet again in Indianapolis, but in the month of April 5th.
Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, or as I saw him called this week, Shame Gilgeous-Alexander, should feel shame upon his family and his name because of something he did in the Pacers game this week. So if you're unfamiliar, Shea has been having such a I always feel like I say his name wrong. Shai has been having such a great season. Truly, top 5 MVP caliber season. And he was on the precipice of breaking the Oklahoma Thunder record of the most 30-point games in a single season by a single player, which had been held by Kevin Durant, which is, of course, really impressive. Now, for OKC, they are the newest franchise, so, the records may have a little less weight to them, but still, it's a franchise record over a MVP Hall of Fame caliber person in Durant. But in order to get the 30 points, he did it in kind of what a lot of people think is kind of, quote unquote, the technical term, icky. So the Thunder were down by 10 points with 17 seconds left in their game against the Pacers. The Pacers have been involved in a couple of things this week, and Shai fouled at the last, fouled with about 10 seconds left on defense in the paint of the Pacers, like on the Pacers side, on the Thunder side. So it was deep in their own territory, and it didn't really make a lot of sense because the game is over. You don't have time to really come back. And then after the free throws were made, he gets the ball, runs down the court, scores an easy 2 in a layup because it's essentially garbage time, and he breaks the 30-point record. And it's so unfortunate because this record that he is breaking is so impressive. And then he does it in one of the most awkward, kind of fumbling the bag kind of ways where no one really respects it. And that's the thing with a lot of sports fans. It's really interesting. We care about stats, but we don't want the players to care about stats. And so these like thresholds seem to matter a lot to people, and it matters because it matters to people. It eventually matters to players. And so the leads to this conversation of like empty stats versus like garbage stats. You know, if you're actually stuffing the stats with a lot of numbers, it's actually helping your team. For example, this is a big criticism of Russell Westbrook when he was on the Oklahoma City Thunder, because he averaged a triple-double for 2 seasons in a row, which is crazy impressive. And the Thunder were solid, but sometimes people felt that his goals of getting a triple-double, which, like, to be fair, it seemed pretty obvious when he was close trying to get to 10 something in a category, and he would lead to less efficient play. Now, this is the first time I've seen from Shea this season, and maybe I've missed it, where he was doing something that seemed really selfish just for himself, but it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth this week and kind of led to a lot of clowning on Twitter and pretty much everywhere where they any corner of the internet where he could be made fun of, he was. And the reason for this is fans don't like when players are hunting for stats. It doesn't look good. It doesn't lead to a great product, and it makes the stats feel hollow. We want the stats to feel meaningful, right? And sometimes it can be hard if you only look at box scores to kind of see what's meaningful. We see this a lot sometimes in football. A lot of quarterbacks who have great like numbers in terms of passing, you find out their numbers come in the fourth quarter when their team is down 4 touchdowns and they have no chance of winning. And sometimes that happens with basketball. It's like, oh, cool, you're doing this and your team is 12-70. Oh my gosh, like, does it actually matter? But then you look at someone like Jokic, who gets triple doubles a lot, but if you watch him play, it never feels like he's intentionally doing it for the cloud or for the stats. He's doing what's best for his team. And so Shai, congrats on the record, but this was not the way to do it, buddy. I think it feels offensive calling someone Canadian buddy. It feels derogatory. I don't know why. It's okay, buddy. Don't do that again, buddy. But pretty much, again, basketball players fans don't want to see this. I think the one exception that most of us would agree on is like career milestones. Like if you're about to break a record that is like natural within your career, like a points record or a points threshold or rebounds or whatever it is, that I feel most fans are like, yeah, we want to celebrate that. But for something like this, like a 30-point game, it didn't change the outcome of the game. The Thunder still lost, and they lost by a lot. So hopefully we can all take lessons from this, and in our own lives, maybe we should chase the clout and the stats a little less. Just do what's good for the team.
One more bucket or one more stop. Trace Jackson-Davis. Oh! He put the entire country of France in the basket. Take that 8-foot wingspan with you.
That is his welcome to the league moment.
The audio just heard was a dunk by Trace Jackson-Davis over Victor Wembanyama, which is incredibly impressive to do because that's something you will maybe do once or twice in your life, is actually dunk on the big man. And this audio clip is not to poke holes at Victor Wembanyama. It's actually the opposite, that dunking on him is seen as a highlight. And I think a lot of players you'll see, and we're going to talk about some examples of, where they're going to see Victor and try to beat him, right? Because everyone's talking so big about his game that I'm going to really try against them. And we see this against great teams, throughout history, right? You're playing the great team, you're going to step up your game. Or you're playing the great player, you're going to step up your game in order to beat them. And we're starting to see this with Victor, where I feel like people are now trying to put in their extra effort because they want to look good on him. And the time that you're going to look good on him is probably his rookie season, where there's less opportunities too. But the reason I bring this up is Victor has such a good mindset. This is what he said about the dunk. He said, getting dunked on is nothing. It's part of the game. I dunk on a lot of people, and a lot of people dunk on me too. But I think I block more often than I get dunked on. So that's a positive. And that's the right way to think about it. There's so many times defenders clearly make the business decision to not block what will be a dunk by someone. And so I respect Victor a lot, even being someone who is being touted as like the next great thing, is willing to try on defense, and it doesn't matter if he looks a little silly, and that's the right mindset. And also with this mindset, like, it goes a bit further. There's a quote that I heard this week from him that I absolutely love. So this was an interview that he did in French, and it was talking about Defensive Player of the Year. Basically, if you're unaware, Victor is not really at all being considered for Defensive Player of the Year because the Spurs are just so bad as a team. And some people think that's unfair. And, you know, I think most NBA insiders think that record should matter a little bit for Defensive Player of the Year. And I can understand that, but his on-off numbers are ridiculous for the Spurs. Like, they're in a historically bad defense without him, and then like a competent defense with him. But it's like, how do you measure that against like Rudy Gobert, whose defense is like, his team's defense is the best all time, and he's the best, or one of the best of all, like one of the best in terms of underlying metrics. And so what Victor said about Rudy, he said, I know that Rudy has a very good chance of winning it this year, and it would be deserved. Let him win it now, because after that, it's no longer his turn. Yes, Victor, this is the kind of energy I like. The reason I'm bringing up Victor is that he had a really impressive week. One of my favorite moments was Nikola Jokic was trying to bully him, not literally, but in the paint. And he got blocked by Wemby, and you never see Jokic make missteps like that very often. And I really want all of you to know that this is, I think, a lock for Rookie of the Year. I on the record at the beginning of the year said that he wasn't going to win it because I thought they would tank, and they are tanking, but they're playing him, which I wasn't expecting. I thought they would try to restrict his minutes at this point in the year, but they're still keeping them up. He's not on the minutes restriction that he was on. And I just want you all to appreciate the greatness that is Victor. This week, the last couple months, especially, but the last, week or two, it really feels like the Spurs are kind of getting it together. I've seen a lot of good, and Victor's really improving. And I think next year he can really make a splash for some of these awards, which is crazy. You rarely see that kind of efficiency and success from a newer player. And when the Spurs scheme actually is there to really support all of the talent of Victor, I think the Spurs can very easily go from the team they are now to a play-in team next year, which feels like a big ask in the West, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But I just want you all, I know we talk about him a lot, but it just please watch it. He's doing stuff on a court every game that I've never seen anyone do, and he's only 20. And it's only going to get better. So, Victor, you have the right mindset. You care about improving. You care about winning. You're just so excited to win. And it doesn't seem like any moment is too big for you, which is so impressive at the age of 20. So, Victor, keep on Victorin. Victor, keep on Wembanyama in. Okay, we'll work on it. We'll work on that bit.
Performance of the week.
We have a couple of performances that I wanted to highlight this week. So even though the segment's called Performance of the Week, just add a tiny little us in your brain. But first, we're looking at Jalen Duren of the Pistons, who had a 24-point, 23 rebound, 5 assists, and 1 steal game in only 28 minutes, which is incredibly efficient. And the reason I bring this up is when this stat line came out, I didn't realize that Jalen Duren, it wasn't his second or first time doing it. It was his third time having a 2020 game. And you see these moments with these Pistons where you're just like, how can you be so bad? Because you have players that are doing stuff like this. So Jalen, I just want to highlight that because I think the Pistons are very easy to ignore because of how bad they are. Another performance this week that deserves being mentioned is Daniel Gafford made 33 straight attempts in a row. That's incredible. The record is 35, held by Wilt Chamberlain. And so he has the longest streak of shots made in a row by anyone other than the named of Wilt Chamberlain. And part of it is if you watch Gafford play, he's doing a lot of dunks. And, thank God for Luka and Kyrie being able to really set up and create the space where Gafford just opened. Gafford loves to dunk the ball. Gafford on the Mavericks is a huge improvement. The Mavericks look good. They beat the Nuggets this week, as we heard earlier, with the Kyrie shot. And unfortunately, pretty much he was on 33. He gets into the next game and everyone's like, he just needs 3 more baskets in a row and he's going to break the record. And he missed the first one. And it's hard when you have streaks like this, especially when you have to think about them game to game. I think the closest equivalent in sports may be like a hitting streak in baseball, and you can kind of sense it, right? And it's kind of weird when streaks, I know that's performance of the week, but it goes throughout multiple games because you have time to sit on it and get nervous. And I wonder if that affected Daniel Gafford. I mean, if I'm the Mavericks, like, how can I not think about that, right? How can I not think, how do I give him the easiest layup or easiest shot ever? How do I do that 3 times in a row so he breaks the record? The last thing I want to talk about, this is less a performance of the week, but more of a consistent performance trend. Now, basketball is so interesting because certain teams seem to match up with each other in good or bad ways. And I hear this a lot, but as I am getting more proficient in my basketball education, I feel that it's really how do bigs match up with each other. And it's really interesting. For example, Anthony Davis always will do really well against players you may not expect. Something like Rudy Gobert. Anthony Davis always seems to put up really good performances against. But Anthony Davis cannot put up a good performance against Domantas Sabonis. Sabonis and AD, right now Sabonis has won the 10 games against AD, and basically he's constantly cooking Anthony Davis. And it's crazy because Anthony Davis never does really anything wrong, like most of the time. But but there's some specific players who it seems like their game doesn't translate against other players. I think for AD, part of it is not your traditional center. Yeah, he's a big guy and sometimes will play the point of attack defense, or he can be more of a drop coverage rim protector kind of guy, which like he has that versatility. And a lot of big men are probably, Sabonis, he's probably more of your traditional quintessential big guy, in the paint, trying to get rebounds. AD's doing that, but AD, plays kind of a more flexible role. And I think that's why he struggles against maybe sometimes these more traditional centers. And then he doesn't struggle sometimes against other traditional centers because of the fact he is flexible. And so it's really confusing. It's really interesting when we think about matchups, but Domantas Sabonis has got AD's number. Very funnily, after the game, Sabonis said, "Can we please stop talking about me beating Anthony Davis?" And everyone's response is like, well, then stop beating him. And as a Lakers fan and an Anthony Davis fan, Sabonis, please stop beating him.
Oh, it's awkward. It's awkward. It's awkward.
This week we had a couple of awkward moments, so much so that I felt that I should make a separate segment about it. The first moment is the more lighthearted moment, and then the second moment is has a little more oomph to it. So would you believe it? When I was perusing, what I like to do when I'm getting ready for a show, I'm looking at Reddit, see what some of the top posts are. I'm looking at all the different websites, and throughout the week I try to take notes so I can get ready. And throughout this week, with all these great buzzer beaters, right? What would be the top post on the Reddit NBA thread? And of course, it would be that Grady Dick and Anthony Black did a jersey swap. And before the cameras, they're both smiling really happily as it says Black Dick. And I mean, that's why we love basketball, right? Is the camaraderie, the jersey swapping, you know, who doesn't love some good old Black Dick? You know what I'm saying? But that moment's a little more lighthearted, but not as awkward as this next moment. So this week, the Lakers organization revealed the Kobe Bryant statue. Now, if you're unfamiliar with statues, you may be. Maybe you've never seen one in your life. I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions about you because that is rude. Because I'm just a podcaster and I don't know your life. I don't know what you've gone through. But presuming you don't know what a statue is, this is what it is. It is a very hard to change thing. Which means you wouldn't want a mistake on a statue, right? Because statues are, they're in stone, they're chiseled, they're built. But unfortunately, in Kobe Bryant's official statue that was released they released into the wild Kobe Bryant statue, revealed this week, had not one, not two, but three different typos. So for example, and this is what the news report, instead of Jose Calderon's name on the box score against Kobe's faithful 81-point game night, which is what the statue is referencing against the Raptors, it says Jose Calderson instead of Jose Calderon. Instead of Von Wafer or Waffer, I'm sorry, I don't know his last name, it said Vom. So instead of Von, it's Vom with an M. And then instead of coach's decision, spelled how decision is spelled, they spelled coach's decision the way that I would spell it. This is how coach's decision is spelled on Kobe Bryant's statue. D-E-C-I-C-I-O-N. That's not correct. It should be D-E-C-I-S-I-O-N. And this is just embarrassing. That plain and simple. How do you unveil a statue of one of your most beloved franchise players? And I can maybe understand it. I don't actually, I'll be honest, I can't even understand a single typo. There's so many eyes that had to approve of this and look at it. And as someone I'm a teacher, and so I sometimes in my work will do logistics, and I might look at someone else's work, and sometimes things pass the eyes of people. But how does this happen? You're honoring your most famous player of recent years who also died tragically with his daughter. You need to do this correctly. And sometimes it feels like recently the Lakers organization has been missing out on doing these big key kind of details correctly. And as a Lakers fan, it's kind of awkward to watch. So, like I said, this week had some awkward moments, whether it involves Anthony Black and Grady Dick or having some massive typos on a statue that I'm sure they've already come out and said that they're going to fix these typos. And hopefully in the future, there won't be any typos. Just wanted to talk about the Western Conference, and we've talked about it because, it's half the conference, it's half the teams. So, of course, we've talked about it. And every week I try to give you standings updates. But I really want to just kind of dive deep into the West for a second. Not as deep as I have in the past sometimes, for example, when I did my preview show. But I just want to talk about more specifically how fun the West is this season and how unpredictable it is. As a basketball fan for pretty much my whole life, typically speaking, especially from the West, but really any conference, there's only one or two teams you really feel like there's a chance, right? That they can do something. And the last few years it's been better because there's less quote unquote super teams, or you could argue there's more super teams. So if there's more super teams, there's less super teams because super teams are in comparison of the teams around them and their superness. I think that makes sense. But this year feels like the most unpredictable year. And it's funny that I say that because it's probably going to end up being the Celtics Nuggets in the finals. And it'll be the most obvious thing. But from the West, I just want to talk about from the 11th seed up. So first I want to talk about the Rockets. The Rockets are the 11th seed and they're 7-3 and had Alfred Sengun. Thankfully his injury's not bad. but they've been 7-3 their last 10, so they're trending upwards and they're kind of putting things together. And they're on the fringe. But I still think the Rockets or even the Jazz, who are the 12th seed, or let's be real, the Grizzlies, who are the 13th seed, I think those three teams, in the right circumstances, could be play-in teams in the East, right? So we're talking about, the West has a wide, high level of talent all the way through the conference. Like, pretty much unless you're the Blazers and the Spurs have hope next year, right? So pretty much if you're not a Blazers fan, there's reason to believe in your team in the West somewhat. Then you get to play-in, and these are the current play-in teams. The Lakers, who made it to the Western Conference Championship last year. The Warriors, who 2 years ago won the whole damn thing. The Suns, who have multiple Hall of Fame level talents and are considered, a really good team. You have Durant, you have Booker. Then you have the Mavs, who, again, a few years ago made it to the Western Conference Finals. You have a complete Mavs team that is putting things together now that they have some bigs. Kyrie is back. Luka, it's all working. You have the Kings, who last year almost beat the Warriors in a really competitive playoff series and now have more of that playoff experience, who are the 6th seed. The Pelicans, who are just solid through and through, the 5 seed. You have the Clippers, who have been gone a little bit down recently. Who are the 4 seed. And then you have the Wolves, who, again, are super competitive, great defense, who are the 3rd seed, only 1 game out from the 1st seed. You have the Nuggets, who for a moment this week was the number 1 seed. And then, of course, you have the Thunder. So now that I've laid the stakes, I'm just going to kind of quickly talk about this. What's cool about the West this year, to me, is so much of this season will be dependent on matchups in the playoffs. And so I think you will have teams strategically winning or losing to try to duck or get certain opponents. For example, the number 1 seed, the Oklahoma City Thunder, have been amazing all year, have the best differential in the West. But I don't know if any big team especially, but if any team's really scared of them, right? So imagine that, like, you could be targeting the 8th seed because you could maybe get the Thunder in the first round and hope that you can make a splash. The Nuggets are the Nuggets. We're not going to worry about them. I think they can beat anyone. The Timberwolves, right? I think that they're a really good team, but I think a lot of it will depend on matchups. How does their kind of so-so offense sometimes, how does that really play against some of these high-caliber offenses? Then we have, like, the Clippers, who I think the Clippers are a huge wild card team. I think, honestly, they could beat and lose to any single team in the Western playoffs because when they're on it, they're so composed. They have great pace. Their defense is, like, better than the sum of its parts, it feels like sometimes. But I think they could also lose to any team that is bigger than them. They could also lose if their shooting goes cold. You have the Pelicans, who I never know what to make of the Pelicans, which is kind of fun with them. You have the Kings, who are definitely not what they were last year, I feel like, but they're more mature and a little more composed, even though De'Aaron Fox is not playing how he did last year. Again, the Kings almost last year made it to the second round in their first time making it to the playoffs, and so they could potentially make a splash. You have the Mavericks, right? Going back to the Mavericks, Luka by himself a couple years ago just took the Mavericks to the Western Conference Finals. They beat Denver this week in a very close game, which shows that they can play these games. And Denver's actually trying. They aren't always trying the whole season. And then you have the Suns, who can get crazy hot. Again, they can do all these things. And, like, it feels weird to be like, oh, the Warriors and Lakers are the 9th and 10th seed, right? They're going to play each other in the play-in as it currently stands. And I think either one of those teams could make it to the second round. I don't think either of them would really make it to the conference championships. But the fact I'm saying that about the 9th and 10th seed, that I could see a world in which they could make it to the second round. A couple years ago, you've been like, Bobby, that's sweet. That's so sweet, honey. That's great. Maybe you should go take a nap. Maybe take a nap and stop having these dumb thoughts, right? Because that's stupid. But it's not stupid this year because that's reality. And the whole kit and caboodle, the whole point of this is that this is, to me, the most fun regular season I've seen from the Western Conference specifically, because while you have the Nuggets, who are probably the elephant in the room, it feels so wide open. And even with the Nuggets, so much of the Nuggets' success historically, last 5 years has been their health, because they haven't been healthy in the playoffs. But when they are healthy in the playoffs, when Jamal Murray's healthy in the playoffs, they play like freaking out of their mind, right? They just play crazy. So enjoy it. That's all I'm going to say. Enjoy it, because this is going to be a really exciting last few weeks of basketball. Thank you all again for listening to another episode of the OmniSports Podcast. If you don't mind following us wherever you are listening to this, rate us, right? If this is on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get podcasts, give us a rating. It helps people get to know where we are. Please join our Discord. Our Discord is linked below in the show notes. We would love to have you there, especially have people to talk with while basketball games are going, right? If you like basketball so much or listen to a podcast, why don't you have some friends to chat with while a basketball game is going, right? Or send highlights or crazy dunks or anything like that. And last, as a reminder, please, if you're able to, I would love for you to fill out a March Madness bracket and join our March Madness competition, which again is linked down below. I think it's super fun. I think the crazy chaoticness of March Madness is a spectacle upon itself. And I think it's a really cool way to build community. So join our community and be part of it by participating in the March Madness bracket. And again, if you want to join the paid one or the free one, no judgment either way. The information for that is down below. But if you do join the paid one, I don't mind, because I'm gonna take your money. That's right, this is a challenge. I'm gonna beat you. And if you think that, oh, Bobby, you're not gonna beat me, I'm gonna beat you. Good. Prove it. Prove it via brackets. All right, and you know who else is gonna prove it this whole week? You, because you're a rock star. And you don't have to prove it, because you already are. Have a great day and a wonderful week.